It's been 9 days since the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a pandemic. And while there is no joy in saying this whatsoever, despite the numbers you are hearing each day from the White House briefing room, the cavalry is not going to make it in time to save some people. In fact, for some, the cavalry is not coming at all. It's happening too quickly. We lost too much time.
This video was posted on social media. It shows military trucks carrying coffins of coronavirus victims to other provinces because local crematoriums are just struggling to cope. Nearly 100 people have died in the town.
There have been instances in parks in Brussels where people have congregated in big numbers, either playing football or having a picnic, and it's been dispersed by the police. And the warning from the Interior Ministry here in Belgium is that you'll get two warnings. First of all, you'll get the initial warning, and if you're seen again, there's a €4,000 fine or a 3-month prison sentence. And the Interior Ministry is saying you should call the police if you see groups of people out of the house.
Why the death rate in Germany is comparatively low. The first is that the experts say Germany is in the relatively early stages of the epidemic. Secondly, it has a well-resourced and rather robust health system. But thirdly, and perhaps crucially, it's about, the experts say, the way in which testing has been carried out here. Having said all of that, they do expect that death rate to start to rise.
Elderly people are obviously a particularly high-risk group, so that could be contributing as well to that relatively high death rate. And in addition to that, there has been some criticism of Spain when it comes to its testing for coronavirus, that the testing hasn't been done soon enough, that it hasn't been rigorous enough, and therefore that when people are being hospitalised, that it's that much more difficult to cure them and indeed to save their lives.
WHO has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
We are all working in a state of very high stress and tension. Psychological tension has gone through the roof. Unfortunately, we can't contain the situation in Lombardy. There's a high level of contagion, and we're not even counting the dead anymore.
Vast country, and with more than 80 million people, and reports from many cities and smaller towns say that they don't have test kits and they're unable to test all the people who are passing away. But interestingly, Kianush Jahanpur, one of the spokespeople for the health ministry, said that every hour 50 Iranians are being infected by the coronavirus, and every 10 minutes one person is dying.
To not come out of their homes unless absolutely necessary. The Prime Minister said the symbolic day-long curfew on Sunday, the 22nd of March, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. will be a test of the country's resolve and show of unity. All except those involved in essential services have been urged to observe this public curfew. The Prime Minister, many observers say, used this opportunity to perhaps prepare citizens in case India has to observe a formal lockdown in the near future.
Across the continent, there are more and more calls for religious leaders to reconsider holding big meetings. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa held a meeting with religious leaders today in South Africa to urge them to do this. In Kenya, there was a similar call from President Kenyatta over the the weekend, and we have seen that the evangelicals have heeded that call. Some of them will be streaming their services on Sunday. The Muslims have said that people should not go to the mosques. This is unprecedented.
The land borders have been closed here in Sao Paulo, where we've seen the highest number of cases. Shopping centres are being told to close until April. They've supermarkets and pharmacies, they're allowed to stay open. There are delivery services for restaurants. You can't go out and sit in a restaurant now very easily. I mean, the roads here are very, very quiet. In a city that's, the bigger cities, we're talking 20 million people, but the streets are clear. That's never seen in this country, in the big cities.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10.
You're supposed to keep us safe, and the American people deserve some straight answers on the coronavirus.
4 words describe the administration's response to the coronavirus: towering and dangerous incompetence.
We have contained this, I won't say airtight, but pretty close to airtight. We've done a good job in the United States. Hats off to our public health people.
The vaccine is coming along well, and in speaking to the doctors, we think this is something that we can develop fairly rapidly, a vaccine for the future.
In order to get a vaccine that's practically deployable for people to use, it's going to be at least a year to a year and a half at best.
We have an invisible enemy. We have a problem that a month ago nobody ever thought about. Nobody in the, I've read about it. I read about many years ago, 1917, 1918. I've seen all of the different problems similar to this that we've had. This is a bad one. This is a very bad one. This is bad in the sense that it's so contagious. It's just so contagious.
COVID-19 is going to be a huge burden on health systems. I'm not going to talk about death rates in this talk because, frankly, nobody can agree on the COVID-19 death rates right now. But one number we can agree on is that about 20% of people infected with COVID-19 are going to need hospitalization. Our U.S. medical system can just barely cope with that. As far as we have an expert consensus on COVID-19, it's this. Here in the U.S. and globally, it's going to get worse before it gets better. We're seeing cases of human transmission that aren't from returning travel, that are just happening in the community. And we're seeing people infected with COVID-19 when we don't even know where the infection came from. Those are signs of an outbreak that's getting worse, not an outbreak that's under control.
That's the thing about COVID-19. It doesn't care about how rich you are, how famous you are, how funny you are. It's the great equalizer.
Miami Mayor Francis Suarez tested positive for the coronavirus. Suarez said in a video message posted to Twitter that day that he had tested positive for COVID-19.
After speaking with medical professionals, I will continue to follow Department of Health protocol and remain isolated while I lead our government remotely.
Virus outbreak has the entire world fighting against a global pandemic. While America is now planning and bracing for the worst, the virus is not discriminating between the rich and the poor or the famous.
Here's what I've learned. Here's the secret to kicking this virus. It's not a pill or a potion. It's about your will and devotion. The virus wants us to lay down. The virus wants us to take it. Other than the blessed few, the rest of us who get this are going to have an experience unlike anything else they've ever had. Days and waves. Now I am wise to the beast and its ways. It changes. The fever is just softening us up. It's making your body hurt, so you don't want to move your body, because what it wants to do is get in your lungs. That's what it wants to do.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is in intensive care because his coronavirus symptoms have worsened.
Hi folks, I want to bring you up to speed with something that's happening today, which is that I've developed mild symptoms of the coronavirus, that's to say a temperature and a persistent cough.
Johnson tested positive 11 days ago. He kept working from number 10 Downing Street, where he was in self-isolation. Now he's in much worse shape. His officials say he remains conscious and has been moved to the ICU in case he needs to be put on a ventilator.
The noise in the media has caused great anxiety for the masses. Conspiracies of the virus being man-made have also added to the noise, bringing with it more questions than answers. Are these claims true, or are they the product of some deluded minds? What and whom shall we believe?
Stock markets in America are down well over 25% since their highs, and a global recession is all but certain. Federal Reserve has cut rates to nearly zero. The US has approved a $1 trillion stimulus package. The UK a £330 billion stimulus package. Many industries at risk. Aerospace, travel companies, entertainment, events, retail outlets, the list goes on and on and on. I hear through my sources we should expect military troops here in London in the next couple days on the streets. David, there's an ancient Chinese expression that says, may you live in interesting times. Some say it's a curse. What do you see in the world?
You don't think that it was a created virus. But the fact is, whether it was or whether it wasn't, doesn't matter to the fact that once you roll this out, it takes on a momentum of its own.
I agree with that.
And therefore, what is unfolding was desperately predictable. And in fact, we'll get into this as we chat, two massive 1% organizations, one in fact 6 weeks before this virus came to light in China, were playing out scenarios and simulations based on exactly this scenario that's unfolding now. And what they said would happen is exactly what is happening.
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. You can have a virus where people feel well enough while they're infectious that they get on a plane or they go to a market. The source of the virus could be a natural epidemic like Ebola, or it could be bioterrorism. And so there are things that would literally make things 1,000 times worse.
This is not the last major outbreak we're ever going to see. There's going to be more outbreaks, and there's going to be more epidemics. That's not a maybe, that's a given. If we really want to slow down these outbreaks and minimize their impact, we need to make sure that every country in the world has the capacity to identify new diseases, treat them, and report about them so they can share information.
We can build a really good response system. We have the benefits of all the science and technology that we talk about here. We've got cell phones to get information from the public and get information out to them. We have satellite maps where we can see where people are and where they're moving. We can see where people are and where they're moving.
Some have said that China's response is a model for the world, an extreme lockdown that helped to slow the virus's spread. A makeshift hospital built in a matter of days. All made possible by an authoritarian regime that's able to act quickly and decisively.
Is that true? Do you need to be a dictatorship to handle a killer virus? Are Europe and the US at a fatal disadvantage in tackling this intense crisis?
A lot of people are kind of almost looking at China with envy, saying, wow, I guess authoritarianism kind of works because they were able to just shut things down and now the virus is contained in China.
Know the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you don't know where this world is being taken by this cult, then everything seems random. Coronavirus, random. Climate change, random. Economic crash, random. But when you know where we're being taken, you know the outcome, this Hunger Games structure society. Now the apparently random events become clear stepping stones to that outcome.
Here in Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel has addressed the nation in an unprecedented televised speech, saying the country faces its biggest challenge since the Second World War. This, as the country's top disease control official warns that Germany could be dealing with 10 million coronavirus infections in the coming months if its citizens don't adhere to measures outlined by the government.
In many places, authorities have begun extending police patrols to enforce new regulations on which shops are allowed to remain open. Cultural establishments, schools and nurseries are supposed to be closed, along with most non-grocery shops.
You delivered a TED Talk where you predicted pretty much what is happening now. Now, thanks to the world we live in, that has sprouted a bunch of conspiracy theories, everything from Bill Gates invented this virus to prove himself right, or he knew it was going to happen and that's why he said it. Was that TED Talk about this virus? Or was that a hypothetical that has now come true?
Well, I didn't know specifically that it'd be coronavirus and that it would hit in late 2019. But the goal of the talk was to encourage governments to make the investments so we could respond very quickly and keep the case numbers very, very low. And so sadly, this is not a case where, I feel like, hey, I told you so. Because we didn't use that time when it was clear as the biggest threat to kill millions of people to have the diagnostic standing by, to be ready to ramp up a vaccine factory.
As the coronavirus spreads around the world, getting accurate information about the disease becomes ever more important. But as waves of new cases continue to pop up, so too are COVID-19 conspiracies, the latest one being that there is a link between 5G and the virus. So much so, people are now setting fire to 5G masts across the United Kingdom. With the world in lockdown, in the social media age, there's a heavy reliance on the internet, which is becoming a breeding ground for those wanting to spread conspiracy theories.
On the point about the 5G masts, thank you again for mentioning it. The story somehow got about that they play a role in the spread of the disease. That's just nonsense. Dangerous nonsense as well.
But considering the government has advised the public to stay at home, the internet has unsurprisingly been relied on like never before, meaning separating fact from fiction, especially when it comes to the link between 5G and coronavirus, is vital.
Production and facility investment are also on the decline, resulting in the so-called triple decrease. The economic impact of COVID-19 is especially noticeable in the automobile sector, which has slashed production sharply. Korea's business sentiment has also plummeted to a level not seen since the global financial crisis.
One of the things that government policy is trying to do is to keep essentially solid businesses that just happen to be hit by everyone staying at home, to keep those businesses going so that when things start to improve, they can pick up reasonably quickly. The worry is that a lot of businesses go bankrupt, and then the process, the scarring, if you like, in the economy is much worse, and the process of recovery will be that much worse.
It is the nature of national disasters to actually expose the fault lines and, as you say, the structural injustices in society. So this means that the poor, the vulnerable, will bear the brunt of the pandemic the most.
Overall impact on the economy over the next few months partly depends upon what governments do. There's a trade-off, if you like. The more governments try and keep people at home in order to stop the disease spreading, the bigger the effect on the economy. But already you've had various people who are following this, like the lobby group for hotels and hospitality in the US, saying that they think the effect of this will be as big as 9/11 and the global financial crisis wrapped up in one.
In China this quarter, the economy will contract for the first time since 1976 at the end of the Cultural Revolution. Europe and the US will follow with a delay of a month or two, given that the epidemic started later there. But the spread of the epidemic is picking up speed and causing more economic damage. To use one example, a member of the Federal Reserve said in the second quarter, US unemployment would be 30%, and the US economy would shrink by half. In other words, half of the US economy would disappear, at least temporarily. So it's very, very bad. No one has ever experienced anything like this in their lifetimes.
The thing that's going to matter most is confidence. What's shaking markets right now is people feel that there's going to be this long-term damage and the economy is just going into the ground. And to some extent, this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
There is almost certainly going to be a recession no matter what happens from this point forward. If the recession is relatively short and most businesses get over the hump, then we'll look back on this as an important learning experience. If the virus lasts longer, is more severe than we thought, then it's really almost your worst nightmare.
There's the risk that you could lose your job, a very real risk that you could lose your job, because with businesses shutting down, that means they don't have income and they have to lay off workers, and that has a domino effect on the rest of the world. One business shuts down and stops ordering from another, which has to shut down, which affects another, and so forth. So people's livelihoods, their ability to earn money and their ability to pay for basics like food and rent are at risk in the next few months.
With all the commotion and anxiety caused by the coronavirus pandemic, many have asked the question, is this the end of the world that has come upon us? To that I answer as Jesus to his disciples concerning a similar question. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many.
But my dearest Donald, your simple gift is my favorite. The chicken was delicious.
But there are ways to get a glimpse of some of that wealth. Despite his critics, Dollar's popularity and wealth have continued to grow.
Isn't it true that you want to fly commercial so that you can fly in luxury? How much money did you pay for Tyler Perry's Gulfstream jet, for example?
Well, for example, that's really none of your business.
And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places.
And my company are
into wounded German pride.
We witness a rush of families, 2% of the livestock.
High alert to contain this current outbreak.
Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And many false prophets shall arise, and shall deceive many.
Your $1,000 seat. Somebody is going to avoid a divorce because of the $1,000 seat.
Fresh! Fresh! Fresh!
Will a gay person be accepted into heaven as you see it?
Well, I believe they will.
I like brand new money. I don't want any money around me that's not. You like $100 bills?
Oh, yeah. I like new money too.
Oh, most beautiful thing on earth is a $100 bill. I hadn't seen a woman as good looking as a $100 bill.
Thank you, Jesus. Here's a $1,000 vow. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. You say you want to make a $500 vow? Then do it. Then do it. If that takes faith for you, do it. You want to make a $100 vow or two? If that takes faith, see, I like 1,000 because I know I got you. I got you into faith.
You don't like the book, throw the thing away. I don't mean that rude. You don't like it, throw it out. Don't look at me weird. I'm not hard. I'm doing exactly what Jesus did. No, he said, when you see me, you see the Father. They said, we don't believe it. He said, yo, mama.
What I make happen for others, Ephesians 6:8, God will make happen for me.
And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold.
The South have rushed to remove confessed. Experts say there's been a resurgence of something deeper.
And relief of pot smokers in Canada, it comes as a breath of fresh air.
This is Amsterdam's red light district. De Wallen is full of sex shops, cheap hotels, and peep shows. Scantily clad women in shop windows openly offer their services.
It's really strange that the oldest church in Amsterdam is located here, and the whole red light district is built around it. So it's absolutely kind of weird if you think about it.
And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached into all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come.